You were not created to satisfy everyone. This truth is simple, but living it requires unlearning years of silent conditioning. From a young age, many people are taught, directly or indirectly, that their value lies in how much they can make others happy. You are praised when you are agreeable, when you don't argue, when you put others first. Over time, this praise shapes your identity. You begin to associate love with approval and approval with compliance. Slowly, without even realizing it, you start bending yourself into shapes that fit other people's expectations. You adjust your tone, your opinions, your desires, even your dreams, just to avoid disapproval. But in doing so, something essential begins to fade: you. The reality is that human beings are diverse in their thoughts, preferences, and expectations. No matter how kind, accommodating, or selfless you are, there will always be someone who disagrees with you, misunderstands you, or simply doesn't like you. Trying to satisfy everyone is like chasing a moving target that never settles. The more you try, the more exhausting it becomes. And the worst part is, even when you succeed temporarily, the satisfaction is fragile. It depends entirely on external validation, which can disappear as quickly as it appears. You were created with a unique identity, a distinct voice, and a purpose that cannot be fulfilled if you are constantly living for others. When your decisions are driven by the desire to please, you disconnect from your own values. You begin to ask, what will they think, instead of what is right? Or what do I truly want? This shift might seem small, but over time, it leads to a life that feels unfulfilled and misaligned. You may achieve approval, but you lose authenticity. And deep down, there is always a quiet discomfort, a feeling that you are not fully living your own life. Understanding that you are not created to satisfy everyone is not a call to become selfish or careless. It is a call to return to balance. It means recognizing that while kindness and compassion are important, they should not come at the cost of your identity and well-being. It means learning that your worth is inherent, not something that must be earned through constant sacrifice. When you internalize this, you begin to make choices from a place of clarity rather than fear. You start to prioritize what truly matters, even if it means disappointing others. This shift is not easy, especially if you have spent years seeking approval. There may be guilt, discomfort, and even resistance from those who benefited from your people-pleasing. Some may accuse you of changing, of becoming distant, or of no longer caring. But in reality, you are not becoming less caring, you are becoming more honest. You are learning to give from a place of sincerity rather than obligation. And that kind of giving is far more meaningful and sustainable. The hidden burden of always saying yes is something many people carry without even realizing it. On the surface, saying yes seems harmless, even admirable. It makes you appear helpful, cooperative, and dependable. But beneath that surface, there is often a heavy cost. Every time you say yes, when you truly mean a no, you create a small internal conflict. It may seem insignificant at first, but over time, these moments accumulate, turning into stress, resentment, and emotional exhaustion. When you constantly say yes, you begin to overextend yourself. You take on responsibilities that you don't have the energy for. You agree to plans that you don't enjoy. You prioritize other people's needs while neglecting your own. Eventually, this imbalance catches up with you. You feel drained, overwhelmed, and sometimes even trapped. But instead of addressing the root cause, many people continue the cycle, believing that saying a no would make them selfish or unkind. The truth is, always saying yes is not a sign of strength. It is often a sign of fear. Fear of disappointing others, fear of being judged, fear of losing relationships. This fear drives you to prioritize short-term harmony over long-term well-being. You avoid uncomfortable conversation, but in doing so, you create a deeper discomfort within yourself. You sacrifice your time, your energy, and your peace, all to maintain an image of being agreeable. One of the most damaging aspects of this habit is that it teaches others to expect your compliance. When you rarely say a no, people begin to assume that you will always be available, always willing, always accommodating. They may not even realize the pressure you are under, because you have trained them to see you as someone who never objects. As a result, the demands increase and the burden becomes heavier. You feel stuck, unable to break the pattern without disrupting the relationships you have built. At the same time, something else begins to grow inside you: resentment. It may be subtle at first, just a fleeting feeling of frustration when you agree to something you don't want to do. But over time, it becomes stronger. You start to feel unappreciated, taken for granted, even though you are the one who keeps saying yes. This resentment can damage your relationships, creating distance and tension. Ironically, the very thing you thought would keep people close, your constant agreement, ends up pushing them away emotionally. Breaking free from this pattern requires a shift in perspective. Saying no is not a rejection of others. It is a form of self-respect. It is an acknowledgement that your time and energy are valuable and that you have the right to use them wisely. When you say no with clarity and respect, you are not being unkind. You are being honest. And honesty is the foundation of healthy relationships. Learning to say no does not mean you will never help others. It means that your yes becomes more intentional. Instead of being automatic, it becomes a conscious choice. You give when you genuinely want to, not when you feel pressured. This makes your actions more meaningful, and it allows you to show up fully without resentment or exhaustion. There will be discomfort in the beginning. You may feel guilty even when you know you are doing the right thing. Others may react with surprise or disappointment. But this is part of the process. You are changing a pattern that has likely been in place for years. With time and consistency, both you and the people around you will adjust. You will begin to experience a new kind of freedom, the freedom to make choices that align with your values rather than your fears. Ultimately, releasing the burden of always saying yes is about reclaiming your life. It is about recognizing that your needs matter, that your voice deserves to be heard, and that your worth is not determined by how much you can do for others. When you let go of the need to please everyone, you create space for authenticity, peace, and genuine connection. Why people-pleasing feels like survival is rooted in something deeper than simple habit. It often comes from a learned belief that acceptance equals safety. For many, this pattern begins early in life, when approval from caregivers, teachers, or authority figures feels essential. As a child, being liked, praised, or accepted is not just emotionally rewarding. It can feel necessary for security and belonging. If love or validation was given conditionally based on behavior, obedience, or performance, you may have learned that adapting yourself to others is the safest way to exist. Over time, this belief hardens into a subconscious rule: if I keep people happy, I will be safe. If I don't, I risk rejection, conflict, or abandonment. This internal rule does not simply disappear as you grow older. It evolves with you. In friendships, workplaces, and even within your family, you may find yourself constantly scanning for what others expect from you. You may struggle to make decisions, not because you lack intelligence, but because you are disconnected from your own preferences. You might ask others for opinions on things that should come naturally to you, simply because you are unsure of what you actually want. Over time, you may even start to feel like a stranger to yourself, as if the person you present to the world is not fully aligned with the person you are inside. There is also an emotional cost. When you are constantly trying to keep others, you are often neglecting your own needs. You push aside your feelings, convincing yourself that they are less important. But those feelings do not disappear. They accumulate. They turn into frustration, sadness, and sometimes even a quiet sense of emptiness. You may feel surrounded by people, yet deeply alone, because the version of you that they know is not entirely real. Another consequence is that your relationships become imbalanced. When you are always the one adjusting, accommodating, and compromising, the dynamic shifts. Others may begin to rely on your flexibility, expecting you to always be the one who gives in. This is not always intentional, but it is a natural result of the pattern. And the more you give up parts of yourself, the more difficult it becomes to reclaim them. One of the hardest realizations in this process is understanding that trying to keep everyone does not guarantee that they will stay. You may sacrifice your authenticity, your comfort, and your peace, yet still face misunderstanding, disappointment, or even rejection. This can feel deeply unfair, as if all your efforts were in vain. But it also reveals an important truth. Relationships that require you to lose yourself are not sustainable in a healthy way. Reclaiming yourself begins with awareness. You start to notice the moments when you are about to suppress your thoughts or ignore your needs. Instead of automatically giving in, you pause. You ask yourself what you truly feel, what you truly want. This may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to prioritizing others. But it is a necessary step in rebuilding your connection with yourself. As you practice this, you begin to rediscover your voice. You realize that your opinions matter, that your feelings are valid, and that you have the right to express them. This does not mean you become rigid or unwilling to compromise. It means that your compromises become conscious choices, not automatic reactions. You learn to engage in relationships as your full self, rather than as a version shaped solely by others' expectations. The difference between kindness and approval seeking is subtle, but it is essential to understand if you want to break free from people-pleasing. On the surface, both can look very similar. In both cases, you are helping others, being considerate, and showing empathy. But the motivation behind these actions is what sets them apart. Kindness comes from a place of sincerity and inner stability, while approval seeking is driven by a need for validation and fear of disapproval. When you act out of genuine kindness, your actions are intentional and balanced. You choose to help because you want to, not because you feel you have to. There is a sense of freedom in your giving. You are aware of your own needs and limits, and you respect them. You can say yes when it feels right and a no when it doesn't, without excessive guilt. Your kindness is an extension of who you are, not a tool to secure acceptance. Approval seeking, on the other hand, often feels urgent and obligatory. You may feel compelled to say yes even when you are tired, overwhelmed, or uninterested. Your decisions are influenced by how you think others will perceive you. You might worry that saying a no will make you seem selfish, rude, or uncooperative. As a result, your actions are less about genuine care and more about maintaining a certain image. This distinction becomes clearer when you examine how you feel after helping someone. When your actions are rooted in kindness, you typically feel a sense of fulfillment or peace. Even if the task required effort, there is no lingering discomfort. But when your actions are driven by approval seeking, the emotional outcome is often different. You may feel drained, resentful, or even regretful. There is a sense that you gave more than you were able or willing to give. Another key difference is how you handle boundaries. Kindness respects boundaries, both yours and others. It understands that you cannot give endlessly without consequence. Approval seeking, however, often ignores boundaries. You may overextend yourself, take on too much, and neglect your own well-being. This not only affects you, but it can also lead to unhealthy patterns in your relationships where others come to expect constant availability. Approval seeking also ties your self-worth to external reactions. When someone appreciates your help, you feel valued. When your efforts go unnoticed or unappreciated, you may feel hurt or rejected. This creates an emotional dependency where your sense of worth fluctuates based on how others respond to you. Kindness, in contrast, is not dependent on recognition. You give because it aligns with your values, not because you expect something in return. Understanding this difference allows you to make more conscious choices. It helps you pause and ask yourself why you are about to say yes. Is it because you genuinely want to help, or because you are afraid of how you will be perceived if you don't? This question can be powerful as it brings awareness to patterns that may have been operating automatically. Shifting from approval seeking to genuine kindness requires practice and honesty. It involves letting go of the need to be liked by everyone and is accepting that some people may not always agree with your choices. It also involves building a stronger sense of self-worth, one that is not dependent on constant validation. As you develop this inner stability, your actions become more aligned with your true intentions. In the end, kindness that comes from a place of authenticity is far more meaningful than actions driven by fear. It allows you to give without losing yourself, to connect with others without sacrificing your identity. And most importantly, it creates a sense of balance where you can care for others while still honoring your own needs and values.